Hey, what up, guys, and welcome to the ATG Wrestling Podcast. I'm your Resident Marksman TJ Takedown, and today we are going to be talking about what is arguably the hottest feud going in WWE right now, what has unexpectedly been probably the hottest feud in wrestling over the last few months, and I would even dare to say the last really interesting feud, like the most recent interesting feud on the main roster, and I don't even know when. I was thinking about doing this podcast the other day, and so I was just thinking to myself, has there been an angle this hot, with a rivalry this hot, with two superstars, both equally popular, equally hot right now, and I honestly can't think of any, or at least recently, like within the past year, definitely for me. They had the potential to do it with Seth and Dean, that, as we all know, kind of just sputtered out and tripped on its first steps and just face planted. I really don't know why. I don't know why that feud failed, because it was just on a silver platter. And not only that, they've done this feud before, just in reverse. And it's really funny for a lot of reasons. It's funny because I just said they literally did this feud before in 2014? Yeah, 2014. They did it when Seth was newer, when Dean was newer. The Shield had just broken up, so they were really testing themselves as single stars, and now here we are. They're both of them very much established as single stars. They had already feuded. There was so much more history this time around. They also had Dean turn on the most gut-wrenching night possible when Roman left. And then on top of that, Dean hasn't been heel as a single star since debuting. And it's really interesting because most people, when they were talking about the inevitable split of the Shield, everyone was looking forward to heel Dean Ambrose. And I really don't know why. I really don't know why this just face planted as hard as it did. But unexpectedly, Becky and Ronda have just caught lightning in a bottle. They've really just taken a feud that was probably supposed to be a one-off or even a warm-up for Charlotte and Ronda, and they just took it and ran with it. And it's not really surprising once you remember who the two people are. I mean, Becky Lynch has always been a fan favorite. And then the fires of that have only been stoked by her terrible booking of the past, I'd say, like 2 years. And then having Charlotte just waltz into the SummerSlam match and win the SummerSlam match, which I would say it was a bad booking decision, but then it turned around and made Becky even hotter, even though they tried to turn her heel, which is just goes to show you how Vince is simultaneously showing how smart he is, but also incidentally simultaneously showing how out of touch he is with not only the characters that are on his roster, but of his audience. To think for one single solitary second we'd be on Charlotte's side the way everything was booked and boo Becky when we've done nothing but cheer her ever since she's been on the main roster. I can't speak to the NXT crowd, because first off, they're just different from the main roster crowd. And then also, I think maybe wasn't she heel for like a hot second in NXT? I don't really remember, because I've never really watched NXT as much as I've watched the main roster. I've definitely kept tabs on it, especially in the last like 2 or 3 years. But you know, that was at a time when I didn't have the network and I just didn't really watch NXT. But as far as I can remember, Becky has just always been loved. She's always been a perennial babyface. So it's not that she couldn't turn heel. That's not the issue. She could definitely turn heel. But given the circumstances of SummerSlam, no, there's no way in hell anyone was going to boo her because, I mean, you just gave us way too many reasons to sympathize with her and demonize Charlotte. And we're definitely going to be talking about Charlotte today. Charlotte's in this weird nebulous gray area. And, you know, I can't speak to it as 100% as I can about Becky and Ronda just because I'm in a position where I don't have cable in my room, so I don't really watch Raw and SmackDown like live real time. I kind of catch up with it with recaps and clips here and there and just basically knowing what happened and not always, you know, knowing 100% of the context. I may get like 85% of the context or something like that. But we'll get to Charlotte a little bit later. Ronda, I think, you know, I don't really have to say much about Ronda. The rookie year that she's had has been astounding. Was she given the title too early? I believe so, in my opinion. Maybe just a little bit for having, because correct me if I'm wrong, but this is all just off the top of my head, which is how most of these podcasts are going to go, unless it's like a recap, in which case I'll just be talking about the matches of like a pay-per-view or something. But she had the Wrestlemania match, and then the Nia Jax match, I believe, at Money in the Bank. I think that was just her. Maybe she had some Raw matches. Maybe I can't. I'm struggling to remember. Evolution came after. Yeah, so I think she got a chance at the belt on her like second match, which even as I'm saying it seems way too ridiculous. But I think I recall thinking at the time that it was a little soon. I thought it was definitely soon for her to get a shot at the belt. And though she didn't win it on her first try, granted, but still I thought it was a little soon. And then she won it in very underwhelming fashion from Alexa Bliss, which I thought was just, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I just thought that, you know, sort of how the Nikki Bella match played out, I would have much preferred a similar vein to the Alexa Bliss Ronda Rousey match. Just play up how Alexa Bliss is just a better wrestler. She just knows the rules in and out, and she just knows how to manipulate more than Ronda Rousey, who's still very green and very inexperienced. That's an easy match to sort of just, you know, it doesn't have to be long. It can still be like a 5 to 7 minute match. It doesn't have to go on that long, but a glorified squash match was, I think, a waste of another Alexa Bliss reign and hurt Alexa Bliss where, you know, she's already like probably the smallest wrestler in the female division on either brand, if not the smallest, then one of the smallest. So she's already working hard to come across as a threat, and to just have her get squashed like that at SummerSlam on such a huge stage, I thought was really damaging, and it just made it, I don't know. For Ronda's first title win, it was also kind of underwhelming, because it's like, it should be this big thing, and it kind of wasn't. Ironically, the best part of Ronda winning was just seeing all the shenanigans at Cultaholic. If you haven't checked those guys out, they're really cool. I really like their content. But it's really interesting, though not surprising. It's interesting, but it's not surprising to see how Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey have really just been a shot in the arm to this current WWE product when a lot of people are getting burnt out, a lot of people are getting frustrated. We're getting same old matchups, we're getting repeats, we're getting the same old people in main event scenes. And I'm talking about like at the time that Ronda and Becky were kind of going back and forth, and it was, you know, it just needed something. The product as a whole needed something, and this came out of almost nowhere and just really exploded. And then of course, you know, you have Charlotte stepping in, and I thought the whole, and this is why Charlotte gets a little murky, because I guess I'll briefly talk about Charlotte first, and then I'll talk about the Becky Ronda stuff, because Charlotte's alignment, let's say, started to get really murky in the finish of the match with Ronda Rousey, whereas it seemed like they were turning her heel, but then it was another SummerSlam thing of like, I mean, honestly, Ronda had just been so dominant that seeing anybody kind of take her to task was going to be a little cathartic. That's just what happens when you build somebody up that hard, that quick. Unless they're, you know, indie darlings, which I roll my eyes at, because I feel like if we're going to criticize one thing, we should criticize everything. You know, that's just how I am. I feel like if anyone's pushed too soon, we should all be like, well, they're pushed too soon. Instead of going, oh, well, they deserved it. They deserve to come here and just do everything. I'm like, well, you can't get mad at certain people for that and then not get mad at other people for that. But, you know, so it was really confusing because it seemed like they were trying to turn Charlotte heel, but it didn't really take at the pay-per-view. But then they were also still having her feud with Becky, I think. I'm trying to remember. A lot of that stuff kind of blends. Yeah, I think there was still animosity between Charlotte and Becky, but it's like, and then the hug before the pay-per-view was also weird, because it's like, wait, did Becky turn face? And now Charlotte's a heel? And then it's like, to try to keep up with this stuff is a little confusing. And there are some people that are like, well, WWE is at a point now where a lot of characters are going to be more gray. You know, a lot of characters are going to be a little bit tweener, or they're going to be different kinds of faces or different kinds of heels. And then you have that famous Triple H quote from, I think, last year or the year before, where it's like, I think he was talking about Roman, and he was saying, well, yeah, like Roman's the biggest heel in the business because he gets booed. But that's sort of, or like, the fans determine who is face and heel, and I don't think it sort of works that way. I think it would work that way if Vince knew better what the fans were like. And I think a good example of leaning into the whole fans decide who's face and who's heel is NXT. Because that's, I think, an environment where you can have more morally gray folks. You can have morally gray superstars, just like Johnny Gargano it's questionable at this point whether he's a face or a heel, but it's more like he's just a tweener face. Or at least until TakeOver Philadelphia. I think TakeOver Philadelphia kind of sealed the deal that Johnny Gargano's pretty much a heel now. But I think before that, there was a much more compelling argument of like, I think Johnny's still kind of a face. He's just a face with a huge chip on his shoulder now, because nobody's really booing Johnny. I mean, it's just interesting to see the complexity of his character. But they also then book Johnny to very much be a morally gray character. They don't still try to have him be face or try to really hard to make him be heel. Everything that he does is in line with his character. So it makes sense. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's the fact that they try to have their cake and eat it too on the main roster of like booking Charlotte to do heel things, but then they also want her to get cheered, or it's the other way around of they have her do face things, but she's cheered, but they want her to be a face, but she's a heel. And it's like, it just becomes this gray mess. Even when she's very clearly trying to do heelish things, it just isn't interesting to me. It just isn't really interesting to me. And a lot of people pointed out during that time of after the Survivor Series fallout, that it really felt like they were trying to do the same thing with Becky, but with Charlotte. And it really rubbed me the wrong way of and this, let me just say this right now. I love Charlotte. And I love Becky. And I actually am a fan of Ronda Rousey. I have issues with her character and her booking, but I still like Ronda Rousey. It's like I don't not like her. There's not a lot of people on the roster that I don't like, period. I mean, there's one really notable person that I don't care about, but I'm not going to talk about that here. So I don't have an issue with Charlotte, and I love heel Charlotte, and I liked the idea of face Charlotte, though I didn't really like the execution, primarily to the lead up to and actually at SummerSlam. I thought that it was just, the writing was on the wall for Charlotte there. I don't know how they thought we were going to give a damn about Charlotte there, but I do like Charlotte, but I think she can do much better heel work, and just in the shadow of Becky, and in the shadow of Becky and Ronda, she just comes off as way too much of an afterthought. I don't know. Having them on the same roster now is just it's like having two alphas, but you definitely like one alpha more than the other alpha. So it's like, it's just this weird gray matter, which is going to factor into what I have to say later. Because right now, we're really going to talk about Ronda versus Becky at WrestleMania 35. Now, the big question, there's two big questions heading into this match. The second one we'll discuss later, and you can already probably guess what it's going to be. But the first big question is it going to main event WrestleMania 35? A lot of people are saying, look, if you're ever going to have a women's main event, this is the perfect time to do it. It's organic. Everyone wants it. It makes sense. It's the hottest thing going in the company right now. If you're ever going to let the women main event WrestleMania, it's now. It's at WrestleMania 35. And then there are some people that, are sort of like, well, the main title should always be the main event at WrestleMania, and they're just a little bit more old-fashioned that way, and I get it. I get both sides. Personally, I think Ronda and Becky should main event for, a multitude of reasons. There's my personal reasons, there's just the cynical business reason, and then there's just the obvious reason. Like, my personal reason is that, personally, in my opinion, I think Ronda has proved to be a valuable asset to the company. And so they've been talking about if they were going to do a main event of WrestleMania, a women main event of WrestleMania, Ronda Rousey just has to be in it. And then it's sort of like, well, then you should just do the match then. Just do the main event match, because it'd been talked about for months and months and months that, like, if there is going to be a main event of WrestleMania, Ronda Rousey has to be in it. And then they gave her the title. So it was like, well, now she has to be in it. And then she started beating everyone on Raw, and then Becky exploded. So now it's like, look, dude, everything that you wanted is happening. Ronda is the champion. She's still a valuable asset to the company. She's still a mainstay and a household name. And now you have the perfect opponent for her. So just do it. Just stop dragging your feet and do it. Because, and then here comes the business aspect of it. The cynical business side of it is, one, it's gonna be gangbusters. Like, there's no downside to it. Everyone wants it. And then you doing it is not going to damage the product at all. It's going to just make it better. It's going to bring more eyes to it. It's going to be headline catching. You know, it's just going to be great from all sides. And that's just from the way that the world is moving. The world is moving to a much more equal, much more feminist position, which I believe is a good thing. I believe it's a good thing that we're now having more conversations about equality, more conversations about promoting women and women's rights and all this stuff. And of course, there are always going to be detractors to stuff like this. And frankly, I don't really care about them. But and I know that there are going to be people that are going to call me all sorts of things for it, but frankly, I don't care. But there's also the really cynical thing of just imagine them not having this match go last after all the talk and all the rumors and all the speculation, even before Ronda Becky was a thing, just from last year when Ronda signed. You know, the talk has been going on for a year now, and it was even going on before that, before Ronda even joined. So now that you have all these things in place, and to then not do it, I mean, you're looking at a repeat of last year's main event of WrestleMania, which got booed out of the building, beach balls were everywhere. It's just, there's way too many reasons to not. There are way too many reasons to put this match last. To then not do it just reflects badly on the company. It just reflects badly, because I think the prevailing idea before any of this was that we wouldn't have a problem, and this is me speaking like for WWE essentially. I think the prevailing idea within WWE was we don't necessarily have a problem with women main eventing WrestleMania. It would just need to be the right story at the right time with the right people, and it would have to be honestly just deserving of going on after the WWE Championship, after the Universal Championship, after a guy like Brock Lesnar or a guy like Seth Rollins or a guy like Daniel Bryan. It would have to be big enough and worthy enough to go after all that. So to then have all those things in place and not do it makes WWE seem like hypocrites now. So I think no matter what, the backlash is not worth it. It's not. And more importantly, and I should have rephrased, my first thing was more of the objective thing. This is my personal standing on it, which is that Becky and Ronda have earned it. Becky and Ronda have earned it. Ronda has had a spectacular rookie year. No matter how you feel about Ronda Rousey, you cannot deny that. And I don't just mean from a booking standpoint, because honestly, the booking of Ronda Rousey has been the worst part of Ronda Rousey. The in-ring aspect of Ronda Rousey has been the best part of Ronda. So, and I mean, that's the most important part. That's the part everyone was questioning. I mean, nobody really expected her to hit it out of the park promo-wise. And the character of Ronda Rousey is really out of her hands at this point, because she's too much of a public figure to be anything but Ronda Rousey, the public figure, the former UFC fighter. Like, we just know who Ronda Rousey is. So the character wasn't really going to do much because everyone already has an opinion of Ronda Rousey. The promo wasn't really going to be the shining point because, look, that's just not Ronda's thing. And it doesn't have to be everyone's thing. It's not Daniel Bryan's thing, in my opinion. It doesn't change the fact that Daniel Bryan's a good performer. And It doesn't have to be everyone. It's not Brock Lesnar's thing. Brock Lesnar doesn't need to talk. Evidenced by the fact that I think I can count on one hand the sentences he's said on Raw in the past year. So, but the most important aspect of Ronda was her in-ring work. And her in-ring work from her very first match to now has been on point. I still think that the Piper's Pit is a little weird, but whatever. WWE is letting her do that, so fine. And then, of course, Becky has earned it. Of course, Becky has. Like, her entire career has led up to this point. She's put in the work specifically within the past year, within the past few months. She's been killing it. Promos, in-ring work, even on social media, she's been killing it. Like, every single aspect, she has been the exact female superstar that WWE has thirsted for. She's essentially been to WWE in the end of 2018 into 2019 to what Punk was in 2011. She's just been a really crucial shot to the arm. Both of these superstars really need this main event. Not to say that either of them will be damaged if they don't main event. I've already covered the real issue of not having this match main event, and it's not that they will be tarnished. No. But what I mean is that they've earned it. That they deserve the spot of the main event because they put in the work to get to this point, to where we're even having this conversation right now, to where the prevailing idea is that just WWE has to have this match main event now. And honestly, I just think both of them have earned this right, and WWE should let them do it. Now, I said that there were two big questions. There's another smaller question before I get to the second big one. There's another smaller question that I was thinking about the other day when I was initially going to do this podcast, which is that who needs this match more? Specifically, who needs the win more? And more importantly, who's more pressured going into this match? Who has more to prove in this match? And it's just really interesting to me because I think there's an obvious answer, but I don't really know, actually. Because I was thinking about this the other day. It could really go either way, but I think there is a right answer. There is 100% a right answer. And the answer of who should win the match, and this is coming from, you may believe me or you may not, but I'm very good at being objective and being unbiased. And I know that this is the first time I'm doing this podcast, but hopefully as we go forward, it'll become abundantly clear. I am super objective when I want to be. I can leave my feelings at the door. When you just look at all the factors, there's one clear person that absolutely needs to win this match. And that's Becky Lynch. Because a Becky Lynch championship reign is going to be far more interesting than keep going with the Ronda Rousey championship reign. I think that's even with the inevitable superstar shakeup or draft, or whatever the hell they're going to do after WrestleMania 35. I personally like the drafts, so I think they should just do a draft. But that's neither here nor there. I think Ronda Rousey has demolished every single person she's stepped in the ring with. She's only technically got her first loss in a tag team match on Raw. Like, it just stands to reason that having her with the championship is just going to provide more questions that we don't need to be asking, and it's going to be too similar to Lesnar. Lesnar with the Universal Championship is just not good for a prolonged reign. Like, he's been champion too long. He's been champion way too long. And it starts to get to the point where you either need to groom somebody to take it off him, which they were doing with Reigns, which they really should have pulled the trigger on that at WrestleMania last year. Like, really. They really should have. You either need to groom somebody to be the person to take that title off them, or it needs to be a question of a stage. They need to lose it at the right time, at the right stage, under the right circumstances. And we have both of those things now, though I know for a fact that Becky Lynch was not purposefully being groomed to take the title off Rousey. However, just looking at the number of people that Ronda has unquestionably cleanly beaten, I mean, it's just more interesting to have Becky be at the top of the Raw food chain. It also crossed my mind, what if Becky wins the championship, the Raw Women's Championship, and then gets drafted back to SmackDown? Like, or literally any of the titles that are specifically linked to a show. Like, what if Asuka retains at WrestleMania, but then gets drafted to Raw? It's like, do they just give her the Raw Championship? Or like, does she lose it? Or what? I don't really get how that works. But, I mean, obviously, I don't think they would. I just think they wouldn't put themselves in that position, which they shouldn't. Best not to pull at that thread. But I think 100% Becky should win, only for the next steps after WrestleMania. Not even thinking about WrestleMania, but thinking about all the shows after WrestleMania and the feuds that would come after WrestleMania. I think Becky as champion is much more interesting. She could have much more interesting feuds with somebody like Ruby Riott or Ember Moon when she gets back, or Alexa Bliss, and all those things. That's what happens when you have a sort of undefeatable champion like Shayna Baszler or Brock Lesnar. It's just not as interesting the longer you go. Once you get past the people that seemingly could have and should have taken the title off them and they don't, then it starts to just be unrealistic that anyone could beat them. And that's where we're at with Brock Lesnar. And thankfully, Shayna did at least lose once. They put the title back on her, which, all right. But, you know, so I just think Becky 100% should win at WrestleMania. Just the good outweighs anything else. There's much more potential in a Becky reign, a long Becky reign, than a long Ronda reign, because her reign has already been pretty decently wrong. Talk about a Freudian. No, her reign has already been long at this point. But now there's the other question that was much more interesting to me, which is who has the pressure going into this match? Who has more pressure going in to deliver a good match at WrestleMania 35, whether it's the main event or not? Who has the pressure to deliver in this match? And I think it's easy to go, oh, it's Ronda, because Becky's been here before. Becky's been, with WWE forever. This is Ronda's real test, in potentially the main event of WrestleMania, and she's still new. It's still like only capping off her first year in the company. Yeah, there's way more pressure on Ronda. Plus, she's Ronda Rousey. Everyone knows who Ronda Rousey is. I would disagree. I would think, and again, I want to state for the record that Becky Lynch is one of, if not at the moment, my absolute favorite female competitor. Excuse me. Alexa Bliss and Ember Moon are pretty close on that. And I objectively think that Charlotte is probably the most consistent wrestler, even though she's had some kind of boring or stinker matches also. She's not immune, but... and poor Asuka. Asuka's become such an afterthought and it sucks. But, I love Becky Lynch. The man has been on fire. And even before that, she was one of my favorites. Just from a person and a character standpoint, I was always huge on Becky Lynch. However, again, I'm objective. Whenever I talk on this show about stuff, I can be objective. And objectively, Becky Lynch, in my opinion, has not had the same consistent caliber of matches as her four horsewoman peers. And what I mean by that is when you think of Sasha Banks, in my opinion, I think she's just a wee bit overrated, just in terms of the fact that Sasha Banks fans can really get crazy. It's not even Sasha Banks' fault that she's a bit overrated. I think just her fans blow her up to be like, oh, she's absolutely the best performer on WWE, the best female performer on WWE. I mean, even comparing her just to Charlotte, it's like, there's easily one person that's more consistent here, and it's not Sasha Banks. That's not to say that Sasha isn't a good performer. She had the amazing Iron Woman match with Bayley. She had all of those matches with Charlotte on Raw, the WrestleMania 32 match. Sasha has had a lot of good matches. It's just a question. Oh, and the amazing match she had with Ronda Rousey, just, at the Royal Rumble. Sasha Banks can go in the ring. There's no disputing that. It's a matter of consistency, and it's a matter of how many times have I kind of mentally checked out of a Sasha Banks match. But the whole point of this is that Sasha Banks does still have matches that I can easily, pull out of the air and go, Sasha Bayley at NXT, either of those two matches, the WrestleMania 32 match, all the Raw matches with Charlotte, I can just rattle them off. Bayley, same thing, the Iron Woman match with Sasha Banks, I believe it was either the Royal Rumble or the Fastlane match. It was one of those against Charlotte. I thought was really good. I can think of good Bayley matches. I can think of good Sasha Banks matches. Of course, I can think of good Charlotte matches. Thinking of standout Becky Lynch matches is a little bit different. It's a little bit more difficult because then it becomes a little bit more subjective than objective. I think objectively, Sasha, Bayley, and Charlotte have all had great matches that we can all agree are great no matter how we feel about them. But I think when it comes to Becky, you sort of have to dip into the subjectivity and go, well, I personally like this match. Like, I personally liked the TLC match. I personally liked the Hell in a Cell, not the Hell in a Cell match. God, could you imagine? That would have been great. But I really wish I would have done that. But, oh man, a Hell in a Cell match with Ronda and Becky would have, stop. I can't think about what could have been. Because I know WWE would never. But, there are matches that I personally like with Becky Lynch, but I can't sit here and say that there is an objective, just no matter what you think about Becky Lynch, this match is amazing. I can't do it. And I love Becky. I love Becky Lynch. I love Becky. I can't overstate that. She is legitimately one of my favorite people in WWE on the roster, male or female. But I gotta be objective. It's not because of the list of matches that she's, thrown out there, and they've all been like 5-star matches or even all 4-star matches. Like, I can't say it. She doesn't have any standout matches to me. This match is the key to that. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, no matter what, whether it's the main event or not, this match has to be good. I can't see how this match isn't going to be amazing. And that's not just because of Becky. I think Becky plays a huge part in this. She's a ring veteran. She's been here way longer than Ronda. So, of course, she's going to be the one doing most of the legwork. Just like with the Sasha Banks Ronda Rousey match, you could tell, not that Ronda was quote unquote carried, because I hate that term because it's only used pejoratively and it's never used just objectively. But Sasha Banks did carry a lot of the pace and the momentum of that Ronda match. And it showed just how good Sasha is, because the psychology, the storytelling, the pacing, everything about that match was great. It was brilliant. Like, I would say that is one of the better matches that we've had this year and in recent memory in terms of the women's division. It was just really, really good. So you take that match, which had a fair amount of build-up, a fair amount of rivalry, and a fair amount of like character interplay, and then you ratchet that up to 11 and then put it on WrestleMania, potentially in the main event, and that there's no way that match is not going to be good. I have full faith in Becky and in Ronda. I will say again, I have full faith in Ronda because the audience has been turning for a while now on Ronda Rousey. But you cannot fault her from an in-ring standpoint. Ronda Rousey knows how to deliver from an in-ring standpoint. She has proved herself as a good wrestler. You can't take that away from her. You can say that you don't like her character. Fine. You can say that you don't like her booking. Fine. I get it. I sympathize with it. Because there's nothing that just irritates me to my core more than knowing that Ronda Rousey has this character of being a badass and just being a destroyer of all these women on the roster and just coming in to this industry by force, and then just seeing her music hit and her come out and just cheesing and just smiling so hard, slapping everyone's hand. Yeah, I'm just so happy to be here, and here kid, you take this. Aha, I'm so glad I'm here. And look, I get that this is Ronda's dream. I honestly get it. I really do. And at WrestleMania 34 last year, it was so understandable. It's the first time you're wrestling. Your debut match is at WrestleMania, and it's with the three of the biggest superstars in the industry, in the history of the industry. Like, it's a big deal. I get why she was all smiles and cheesy and all that stuff there. But it can sometimes pull me out of the moment and pull me out of her character when it's like, because it's not just that she smiles. I hope you get that, right? It's not just that she cracks a smile. I don't want her to be like Ryback or something, just like, and just, just going crazy and having no humor whatsoever. But there's a difference between smiling and going, yeah, all right, I'm so happy to be here. Oh my gosh, it's so great. Like, there's a difference between those two, and it really pulls me out. So I get why people have an issue with her character, and I get why people have an issue with her booking. I already touched on that earlier, because it is a lot really soon. She hasn't even been on the roster like a full year yet from an in-ring standpoint. So I get it. Don't misunderstand. I get it. But from an in-ring perspective, I 100% have faith that she's going to hold up her end in this match and that Becky's going to deliver in this match too. I don't think it's Becky's fault that she hasn't had a standout match. I think it's just been a matter of she hasn't been put in enough feuds, enough good feuds. She hasn't been given the time in most cases, and just she hasn't been able to let loose like she has now. Because I've seen her matches just been getting better and better and better. The SummerSlam match was great. It was fluid. It was crisp. The Hell in a Cell match was very technical, and it was, again, very fluid, not a lot of, missteps or hiccups or botches or anything like that. Maybe a little too technical given the animosity between the two, but, whatever. They got that out of their systems at Evolution, where the TLC match was also very good. I think it's just more so been a matter of time before Becky has a standout match, and she just hasn't been at that point yet for a variety of factors, not just because of her. And at WrestleMania 35, she's 100% gonna notch that, standout, objectively amazing match with Ronda, or with Ronda and Charlotte. Which brings up the second biggest question of this rivalry and this potential match at WrestleMania 35. The biggest question is it going to main event? The second biggest question is it going to be a one-on-one match or a triple threat match? And honestly, I don't get to say this a lot these days in WWE, but you know what? At this point, I could flip a coin. I could see them doing either, and either would be understandable, and either would be objectively good matches. Arguably, the better match from an in-ring standpoint is the triple threat, because you get to protect Ronda just in case, and then you're just adding the most consistently good female wrestler to a match that is already set to deliver. It's just gonna get more good. It's like, adding hot fudge to a sundae. If you take the hot fudge out, it's just ice cream. If you add the fudge, okay, it's a sundae. Like, either or, really. But I do think there's a little bit of a catch-22. There's just a little bit of, I could see it going either way. I don't 100%. It's my opinion on this is going to evolve as the weeks go by and as they build to the match. Because I think if you go with the one-on-one match, it's more final, it's more cathartic, it's more, since it would be history of the first time a women's only match is going to be main eventing WrestleMania, it's just nicer, I guess, to have it be a straightforward singles match for the title that's organically built, that's for the championship, and it's like, cool, awesome. It makes sense. And it's, when we look back and go, the first women's match, this is going to be a great match to have it be the first one to main event a WrestleMania. So from a story perspective, from a history perspective, I think it's much better to go with the one-on-one match. But again, as I just said, from an in-ring standpoint, there's, I think, no question that the better match is going to be the triple threat. Because think about it. On top of that, on top of having three of the hottest women on the main roster right now, all in one match in the main event of WrestleMania, that's also now a no DQ match. That's also now a no count out match. The doors just get blown wide open in terms of booking, in terms of how great this match could be. This match could easily go 20 minutes, and 5 of those minutes could literally just be them fighting all around the arena, fighting in the crowd. Maybe Becky and Charlotte team up to take Ronda out, and they go so far as to take her out in the audience, take her out in the crowd, and then come back and fight in the ring. And then Ronda has to work her way back to the ring to save the match. There's so many different, the buildup of Ken, the kendo stick coming in, the callback to the chair from the invasion of Raw when Becky Lynch laid out Ronda with a chair. Have we seen Ronda use a weapon, actually? I don't think we have. So that's a first too. There's so many things that can work in that triple threat. But again, from a story perspective and from a historical perspective, it might just be better and simpler to just go with the straightforward one-on-one match. And this is a case where the defining factor of whether or not they go with either or is going to be how they build this match going forward, how Charlotte develops as a character, how the audience is, how receptive the audience is to the match. And most importantly, don't put Charlotte in this match and have her win, please. Vince, just promise me you won't do that. All right. Can you promise me that, please? Please, Vince. I can suck it up if Ronda comes away the winner. I can deal with that. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world. It's 100% the right thing to do to give Becky the championship. Just please don't put Charlotte in this match and have her win a la SummerSlam. Don't do it. I also saw an interesting thing on Instagram of there's a very good chance that Becky could win the Raw championship. Charlotte could, re-challenge Asuka, win the SmackDown championship, and Sasha and Bayley could win the women's tag team championships, and all 4 of the horsewomen could close out WrestleMania with gold. I mean, that's like shades of, Eddie and Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20, of them like coming out and just being there in the ring all together with gold. Having women main event WrestleMania for the first time, and then having all 4 of those women that maybe didn't start the women's revolution, but kicked it into the stratosphere that it needed to be in NXT. Because I'll still stand by the fact that Paige and Emma more or less started that revolution. They were the spark that ignited it. But then the 4 horsewomen are what fanned that flame and got it to grow to get noticeable, right? So I think it's really interesting going forward. There's really only one way they could really screw it up, and that there's only 2 ways they could screw it up, and that's not have the match main event, because I just think the audience is going to turn on the show at that point. You're just asking for it at that point. You're just egging them on and antagonizing them because it's what everyone wants, including the people in the match. So and the timing is right. Just do it. Just friggin' do it, okay? And then the other way to screw it up is to have Charlotte win, because she just doesn't need it. She just doesn't need it at this point. There will come a time where Charlotte will inevitably have another championship. It just doesn't need to be now. That's all. It just doesn't need to be now. So it's going to be interesting going forward. It's going to be very interesting. I'm super psyched about it. And I've already said there's so many different ways that could go with this, and almost all of them are great. There's only 2 outcomes that really get me worried. Everything else just excites me. And it wasn't that long ago that I had canceled my network subscription because I was just so fed up. I was just so annoyed. I was just so frustrated. And, TakeOver Philadelphia, the Royal Rumble, all their decisions they made over this past weekend have encouraged me, because of course I got the network because of Royal Rumble weekend. I was just going to see how it went, and then if I didn't like what I saw, then of course I was going to re-cancel it and just maybe give WWE a break for a while, because I had just been really frustrated from multiple angles for a long time. So it was just difficult. But now, with all the potential that this matchup alone has, this one potential match is really, really getting me excited about wrestling again. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this, you know what to do. As always, I've been your Resident Marksman TJ Takedown. This has been the ATG Wrestling Podcast. And I can't wait for WrestleMania. So long, guys.